right, welcome back to episode. Sorry, my dog is on my lap and she just burped. I don't know if you heard that. Uh, Welcome back to episode now 7 of Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings. I'm your co-host Chris Dorst. I'm the Steelers fan and philosopher in the group.
And I'm your other co host. I'm Ajay Nair. I am the Chiefs fan and the psychiatrist in this group. And, well, before we get started, let's talk about how you can follow along. Those of you, a lot of people are, and we really appreciate it. You can follow with us on YouTube, or you can get the podcast wherever you download podcasts, pretty much. We're on Instagram at STCF715, on TikTok at STCF8, and on Twitter at Thoughts14820.
Exactly.
So thanks to all of you that already follow along, and anyone who wants to connect with us on any of those various media, please do. We did have a lot of comments over the last couple of weeks, so that's been great. Okay, well, a lot happened. I feel like the state of the Steelers is very different from the state of the Steelers before, and I want to give you a little bit of an open canvas. I'll kind of like direct a little with the questions, but just because of all that's happened, I figure let me just start with state of the Steelers. Question 1 is going to be very basic. I think Stephen Ruiz put it, the Steelers have changed the quarterback room from Pickett, Trubisky, Rudolph to Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. I will open it to your thoughts.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. So we didn't have an episode last week. I was on vacation, and I like it was a really busy vacation. I really wasn't like keeping up. I just sort of had the occasional like checking Twitter or getting a text from you like, oh, they did this and oh, they did this. It was just it felt like I was totally disconnected from the significant portion of my I devote a lot of energy to keeping up with the Steelers, and then suddenly everything is different in like 1 week basically. Which did one of my friends from Massachusetts was raising the idea of it would be impossible, right? But it would be pretty cool if you could have an off season where you like no one knows what's happening with the team, and the only time you learn it is in week 1 of the regular season. So if you imagine like coming into week 1 of next season without having known anything that happened to the Steelers in the off season, it would be quite a shock, I think.
I think you're describing the 1970s.
Maybe that's yeah, maybe that's right. It would have been a totally different world back then, right? Um, but yeah, so I think I have some like football thoughts, and I also have some sort of personal thoughts about like how I reacted to these things, which maybe like as a psychiatrist, I could get your diagnosis of what I'm doing here. um, but so I could start with Wilson. I guess signing Russell Wilson is, I had previously said I wasn't excited about signing an outside quarterback. That I thought we were going to run it back with Pickett and see what he could do for us. And now we got Wilson, and I'm kind of excited, to be honest.
All right.
You can sort of picture how our offense might work with Wilson, like something that we actually might do well, right? So, if we can get the play action game going, if we build the strong running game first and then get the play action game going, which has always been Wilson's strength, the deep ball off play action with Wilson to Pickens, and it looks like we're trying to bring in another wide receiver. I know Mike Williams is supposed to be coming in this week. I should get your thoughts on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for us. But it looks like we're trying to add another good prominent receiver. You could sort of see how that would. I mean, it wouldn't be a terrific offense, but they're the ingredients there for us to score more than 17 points a game, right? Strong running game sets up the play action, and you get some deep shots to. Russell Wilson still has good arm strength. He looks like I was watching highlights from last year. He still has, I think those really pretty moon balls that we were used to seeing from even in Seattle days. I think he can still do that, and so that would set up nicely, I think, with Pickens and another wide receiver. We do need, now that Deontay Johnson is gone, another wide receiver. So hopefully that does happen. But there's, I think, some ingredients to get excited about there. I think also there's things to be worried about. I think the sort of my admittedly somewhat naive impression of Russell Wilson is that he's relied for a while on his athletic abilities, and they seem to be somewhat declining now. Not that they're, he's not as immobile as Ben was in the latter half of his career, but I think Russell Wilson has lost a step, and if his game is still going to be sort of predicated on scrambling out of the pocket and doing things off schedule, then I guess I have some worries that his body is going to be up for it in the way that he wants it to be. No, I don't know. I mean, he looked better last year in Denver than he did in his first year in Denver, so maybe that's promising. But well, it is promising. But you would sort of hope that he can do the kind of thing that Ben, I think, did in his career, which is transition from being a sort of you know uh, someone that's making plays out of structure a lot to someone that is really a pure pocket passer. Um, and Wilson can do that, right? I mean, he's not like he doesn't know how to pass from the pocket, but I think he's going to need to rely more on that if he wants to be successful later in his career here. So that's a concern that I think would be interesting to see what happens in that respect. Um, I guess those are my football thoughts about Russell Wilson. I think there's some excitement um, from that signing. Um, uh, but I do feel like there was some interesting. I mean, this is a little bit self-indulgent, but I the way I reacted to this was really interesting to me because I was pretty adamant that I was not excited about adding an outside person in this podcast several weeks ago. Uh, and now I'm thinking that might have just been a case of motivated reasoning, right? Because, it looked like we were sticking with Pickett, and I thought, well, we got to stick with Pickett and see what happens, right? I got to make myself excited about Pickett. And now that we've gotten rid of Pickett and we've got Wilson and Fields, who I haven't said anything about yet, it looks like we've got, like, I'm excited. I'm more excited than I was. And I think there's Wilson is clearly a better quarterback than Pickett, right? At least from what they've shown. Even Wilson of the last 2 years is better than Pickett. Uh, Not hard to be better than Pickett, or at least what he's shown so far. Um, but I think when you first texted me when it first came out that the Steelers were going to be bringing him in for interviews and stuff, I think my first reaction was something like, "Oh gosh, the cringiness of his interactions with the media and with fans and whatnot is like that was my first thought. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can deal with this." Uh, and then I watched his introductory press conference with the Steelers, and it's so strange. Now I read it so differently. I mean, he definitely does things that are kind of cringeworthy. Uh, or I don't know if the adjective now is just cringe or cringy or whatever. But, he says things that are cringeworthy. But in that press conference, it kind of came across as he was just, overexcited and a bit anxious. He's in a new environment and very understandable that you'd be feeling that way in that setting. Um, and it almost came across as like sort of more endearing than cringy, uh, more relatable. Um, and it's just like fascinating to me how charitable I ended up being in my interpretations of him now that I take him to be like my quarterback essentially. um, so I wanted to ask you if you have any thoughts on like what is going on with me here, right? Like you're the psychiatrist, you can probably figure this out better than I can, but it's strange to me that my impression of Russell Wilson has changed so dramatically in just basically the past week. I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
Is part of it, and the answer might be no, but I'm curious if part of it you think is due to the fact that the Steelers historically have been known for making good decisions and putting together good teams. So does the fact that this infrastructure decided on Russell Wilson, does that give you more confidence in him?
Good question. Maybe that's a charitable reading of it, where it's not purely motivated reasoning, but I have good reason to to think that if we made this move, then it could be a good move. Yeah, I think that might inform my excitement about the football side of it, right? That could be a reason that it's not it's not purely motivated reasoning there. I don't know how much that really impacts my interpretation of him personally, right? I
Probably
think
not a lot.
what I previously viewed as cringeworthy and now view as endearing, I uh, I don't know that the Steelers' organizational stability or decision making can really justify that shift in my interpretation um, of Russell Wilson as a person. Um, but it just seems so strange to me that and maybe this is maybe this is just a general truth that I'm only like starting to appreciate now, but that you can really learn a lot about how you evaluate people from being a football fan, right? I think that whether or not you like a person can really depend on like how charitable you're willing to be in your interpretation of them. Um, and I think being a fan of a particular team can give you an extra jolt, as it were, of charitability when you sign a new player. And so I think that maybe that's what's happened here. But it's just it's just been a really weird experience for me to do this about face so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's true, and that we give benefit of the doubt to people that we like, and we like people because they give us reasons to like them, and being on your team can be a reason to like them. I almost wonder, and forgive me if I'm getting a little too in the weeds here, but you almost wonder if there's a degree of defense mechanism where it's like, on some level, subconsciously, you understand that a large portion of your enjoyment of your life during the football season is predicated on your enjoyment of the Steelers. And so, if you didn't get yourself into a headspace that you were enjoying the Steelers, where would that void be filled? There's a lot
Yeah.
missing there. So, it's very important psychologically to get to a place where you enjoy the Steelers. Otherwise, what's going to be there?
Yeah, that seems right. And in some respect, I've had to do this already, given Ben Roethlisberger's numerous brushes with moral
And potentially legal.
and potentially legal troubles. Let's leave it there. Yeah. So there was for yeah, that seems right. Uh, and that my enjoyment of the Steelers will be predicated on sort of being invested in who we have playing and whatnot, right? And so I do feel like yeah, I somehow got quite invested quite quickly in Russell Wilson when I didn't think I could be about a week ago. It's been strange.
Yeah, it is interesting because it's funny. I wouldn't call myself unbiased with Russell Wilson because he played for the Broncos the last 2 years. But my reading on Russell Wilson is quite different from yours based on the last couple of years. Like, I definitely agree that he still has arm strength and he still throws a good deep ball. I am a lot less optimistic that he will be willing and or able to play in structure. I don't know why he wasn't able to do it well in Denver. It was worse the first year and the second year, but I don't know. It's not like I was impressed with him last year either. Like, we lost it at Denver, but it was because our offense just decided to play about as badly as an offense. Well, I mean, we've seen some bad offense, but it was pretty bad. Um,
Oh yeah, wait, you don't forget who you're talking to here, right?
I know. I was about to say, like, we won the Super Bowl. I need to calm down a little bit, but like, yeah. But never did, like, things went really well for us defensively when the game was put in Russell Wilson's hands, and he had to make a play. And I know our defense was really good this year, so that might be part of it. But I was much less worried when we got us into, like, if he was keeping it for a run or a pass, I was like, great. Like, this is what I want. So, and that's been the case both of the last 2 years. So, I don't know why, because you're right. Like, he's been a good quarterback for a long time. And to be fair, like, I don't know that I paid a lot of attention to the nuances of his game while he was in Seattle. Like, I know he was really good at creating out of structure and really kind of like just pulling something out of nowhere. But and he has lost a step. Like, he'll try to spin out and he can't spin out of pressure and gets sacked instead. You know, but it is really surprising to me that was not able to play well in structure, and maybe that's the case in Seattle too. And I just didn't know that, but I'm a little less optimistic there. And I I bet the cringe will come soon. Like, so I was one of the things that I wanted to bring up was that Ryan Russillo, who now works for the Ringer, came on Bill Simmons' podcast, and he asked the question of whether there was ever a bigger personality mismatch than the city of Pittsburgh and Russell Wilson. And I thought that was a great question.
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a lot of patience for uh, like the unlimited stuff or whatever, right? Like, um, yeah. Um, I do feel like I don't know. Who knows how this is going to go? We've had some definite personalities in Pittsburgh that have not jived well with what you would have expected the fan base to like, and yet when they played well, it didn't matter, right? Like I'm thinking Le'Veon Bell and really Antonio Brown as prime examples here. Um, uh, so probably Brown more than Bell. So I don't know. We'll see. If he plays well, I think we'll put up with it and we'll be happy, um, regardless of how much cringe we're getting. But
Yeah. And
yeah,
the one thing I would say about Bell and Brown that I think is different, and maybe this is not as true for them as I think so, but I think that the real reason why I wonder about the personality mismatch is I feel like Bell and Brown could at least be framed as blue collar, and Russell Wilson is decidedly not blue collar.
mm,
Like, he's dating a singer, and everything about him seems like he wants to be a celebrity, or kind of he's in that kind of circle, and he carries himself like he's it reminds me of the in ancient Rome when Augustus came up with the name princeps. It's like first among equals kind of idea. I feel like that's how I view Russell Wilson. Like, he carries himself like he thinks that. Maybe that's not exact what he thinks actually, but that's the impression I get. And that doesn't
yeah.
seem like a very Pittsburgh mindset.
No, that's the impression. I think. Yeah, it's hard to not get that impression probably from even just from watching like the way he dressed in his first press conference. Uh, Not that was he looked sharp, but that yeah he looked sharp, right? He tried to look sharp. Um, yeah, I think one of my students is a big Seahawks fan, and he was saying yeah he's definitely got an ego, right? Which is I think all good quarterbacks have an ego, as we've talked about on
Yeah,
here before. But
yeah,
uh, the question is, I think, whether he's going to be willing to. I think the real question is whether that ego is going to get in the way of him changing his game or adapting it to what Arthur Smith wants. Uh, and you could see it. So you could certainly see it not going well. Uh, that I can imagine that, but I also can see it going well, or at least better than we've been used to, and that's exciting. Um, yeah, so that's a lot about. Do you want to talk
and
about Fields or sorry, go ahead.
well, just the last to put a bow on it. The other thing that is troubling to me about him, kind of along these lines, is when he came in, he was like to the league. He was a bit of an underdog, and he was the third round pick who was doing really well. And ever since I feel like they won that first Super Bowl, and he became a star, I'm not really clear that his teammates have really ridden for him ever since then. Like, it didn't go well in Seattle, and it doesn't seem like people were really riding for him in Denver. To the point that I think Dave Damashek brought it up after, but he was like, regardless of how much of a steal you think getting a quarterback for 1.2 million is, like, remember that another team was willing to pay 80 million for him to go away. and
Right. That's true. Uh, that is true. Although I mean, so I'll just come back to what were his like touchdowns? I actually don't have these off the top of my head, but his touchdown to interception ratio last year was
I think it was 26 to
significantly
8.
better than we
Yeah.
had. 26
Yeah.
to 8. I would
Yeah.
take that in a heartbeat compared to what we had. We've thrown 24 touchdown passes over the last 2 years, I think. So, yeah. Uh, you know, uh, it's relative, but compared to what we're used to, 26 to 8 would be fantastic. um,
Well, and if there's one person in the entire football community that I would trust to manage a personality, it's Mike Tomlin. So there's that too.
yeah, yeah. I'm excited to see I mean, it looks like Tomlin's excited about what we're doing right now. And I'm excited to see how he jives with all these new additions. Um,
Well, and so then before we get to Fields, what are your thoughts on Pickett being traded?
yeah. Well, good question. I think it's hard for me. There's a lot of like smoke, and It's kind of unclear exactly what happened. It looks like he probably requested a trade. I think his press conference with the Eagles yesterday, uh, he indicated as much after we signed Wilson. There's also reports that he like canceled a workout with our wide receivers after we signed Wilson. Uh, this is tough. I mean, like a lot of Steelers fans are pretty upset with him. Their read is like, look, we gave you, we all wanted you to succeed. You were from Pitt. It would have been amazing if you succeeded here. We gave you the benefit of every doubt, uh, if that's a saying. Uh, and and then you sort of, late last year, it looked like when he got injured and Mason Rudolph took over, there was actually a clip there where someone asked him after came back from his ankle injury and he wasn't starting. I think Brooke Pryor asked him like, "Did you learn anything from your time gone, not being with the offense?" And he so strangely enthusiastically says no. Uh, in this manner that almost made me think like he must have misheard the question or something like that, because like it was very out of character for him. He usually always says the right thing, the team first thing. Uh, but a lot of people read that as like, oh, he's like pouting essentially that he's not the starter anymore. And this kind of looks similar now that we signed Russell Wilson, and presumably, I mean, who knows? We can speculate about what our intentions were there, or whether we were planning to get rid of Pickett or not. But it looks like there's a reading where he's just pouting again. He doesn't want to have the competition of Russell Wilson, and so he wants to get out of there. Now, it's also not clear that he's in a better situation now. He's definitely not going to start over Hurts. Um, wouldn't you have thought that if you had a chance to battle it out for a starting job, you would probably if he can beat either Russell Wilson at this stage of career or Justin Hurts, he's going to beat Russell Wilson at this stage of his career. So you would think he would have a better shot at starting here than he would in Philly. Um, I don't know. I mean, he, so again, there's a reading of all this where he's really sort of come across as a jerk. I don't know how much I want to buy into that, because he has repeatedly for a long time sort of said the right thing, and it's just these like little snippets where it looked like, well, that's out of character. Um, like a little remark there that makes you like, did I even hear that right? Did he hear that right? Um, but that is the kind of thing. I mean, as I'm saying this, right? That those are the kinds of instances that we typically take to be sort of revelatory of someone's true character, right? Those times when they say something that is sort of kind of out of the ordinary for them, or they do something that's out of the ordinary for them. Uh, so much so that like when you look back at them, uh, you wonder if you remembered that right, or you wonder if they heard the question right, like I'm doing with Pickett here, right? So it's it's not an implausible read. I would say that he sort of yeah he was a jerk and all this. But I feel like I don't want to be mad at him. I hope he does well in Philadelphia. I still think he could be good. I'm not sure what opportunities he'll have to really showcase that now, but um, you know, best of luck to you, Pickett. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like there have formed now two schools of thought. Like one being the kind of what you've brought about, what you were saying, the idea that like even some going so far as to say like, well, he doesn't have a winner's mentality. Like he didn't want to compete. Even with Rudolph when he lost that competition, he was pouting about it. Then he didn't want to compete with Wilson. Like he's not a competitor. Like maybe he's a jerk. And then the other viewpoint that I've heard, I think I first heard it from Mitchell Schwartz, former Chiefs right tackle, who basically was like, well, look, like this guy had who we all said was like a terrible offensive coordinator his entire first year as a rookie. Basically, no option. Like things went really badly. The offense was terrible. Then didn't complain about anything. Then they decided to bring back this guy who we all said was a really terrible offensive coordinator, and he had to deal with him again. And then right when this guy gets fired, he gets hurt, and then his job gets taken from him, and he doesn't get to play with his offensive coordinator. So basically, painting the narrative that he's been a good soldier in a tough situation for a really long time, facing adversity, and then it's like on top of all that, when I'm finally going to get a chance, then you're going to bring in Mr. Diva, and it's just like maybe he just got tired of it. And this school of thought I feel like also paints the Steelers in a little bit of a rough light, like kind of letting this stuff out as he was out the door, just like why are you kind of kicking the guy on the way out the door? This is something that I feel like the Boston Red Sox became very famous for. Like anytime they cut anyone loose, there was suddenly a big smear story in the Boston Globe. Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm curious what you think about like the relative plausibility of either side.
yeah. I exactly. I think I didn't mention the sort of counter story that you were just telling there, but I think it's a very plausible story as well, and one that makes that's I think that's partly why I feel like it's very understandable that if he even if he did you know request the trade that it seems like he did, and if he can you blame him? He had the most sort of frustrating offensive coordinator we've seen in decades in Pittsburgh, uh and yeah, exactly. As soon as he gets one game without him, has a good game without him, and then gets injured, and now it's basically he's done, right? Um, so I would be frustrated too if I were in that situation. So it's hard to take this to be too much of an indictment of Pickett's character. I think with all that in mind, it is interesting watching Steelers fans react to this on Twitter, right? Because I think uh, you're right that it this narrative does paint the Steelers in less of a flattering light. Uh, and when you have a choice between these two narratives of like Pickett the powder, as it were, and the Steelers sort of shortchanging him, uh, Steelers fans are going to go for the first one, right? Because
Mm.
you don't question the moral or I mean the goodness of the team, right? You might question the decision making in certain cases, but the team is good, right? It makes the right decisions overall. Uh, so I don't know. I mean, I think I don't I can't I don't want to hold that grudge against Pickett. I think there's different ways to view the situation, and um, I'm just gonna not go for either one. I guess I don't know. I'll sit here in the ambiguity.
All right, and before I think we can like get fully into Justin Fields after we take a break, but before then, I would want to get your thoughts on what do you make of the fact that Pickett fetched more in a trade than Justin Fields did?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think. Well, I don't. I think there's. Yeah. Um, I think Omar Khan might have done some sly moves in order to get Fields at the value that he got him, um, or for the price that he got him. But some of those moves arguably are sort of were already in place for the. I'm being very cryptic here because I don't want to get too much into the Fields discussion at the moment. But yeah, I mean, arguably the it is surprising. Let's just put it that way. The physical uh, traits, if you just compared those from the two players, surely you'd be more excited about getting Fields than getting Pickett. Um, maybe the thought is, Pickett, and maybe the thought is that narrative that you just gave, where he only has really had one game to showcase what he can do without being held back by an offensive coordinator that doesn't seem to know what he's doing, uh, is is what the Eagles were thinking there. I don't know. I think Aditi Kinkwabala has done some reporting in the offseason about how, asking offensive coordinators around the league what they would make of Pickett. And it sounds like a lot of the reactions there are that, Pickett probably is going to be fine, essentially, that he wasn't the problem. Um, I don't know how much you can know that from just watching the offense from a, third party perspective, but it does seem like there might be some people around the league that still think he's got some promise. I mean, certainly the Eagles must think he's got a little bit of promise. So
Yeah, and I wonder too if like because it's just I don't know, the Fields trade situation confuses me so much. But do you wonder if it's just as simple as nobody believes that either of the guys is that promising, and Pickett has two cost control years and Fields only has one, and so basically no one wants to, I guess, pick up Fields' fifth-year option, because if you're
right,
going to pick that up, I feel like to get 2 years of Fields, it's still like relatively cost controlled for a quarterback if you think he's any good. But I guess everyone's just viewing Fields as a 1 year thing, right? I mean, otherwise you'd have to get more than a sixth that could become a fourth.
yeah, I think that's right. Though I think if I understand the uh, state of where the negotiations would be if you were trying to sign Justin Fields to a longer term deal right now, you might have an so let me just say something brief before we go to break here, and then maybe we can talk more about this after break. But I think, look, if you think about signing Wilson first, that does some nice things for our negotiations with the Bears, right? We signed Wilson, and not only do we sign him, but we let out that we're intending for him to be the starter, right? So if you're the Bears and you're trying to shop Justin Fields around, like you don't have a lot of leverage over us. We already have our presumed starter in Wilson.
Mm.
How much are we going to give you for a backup, right? And I think that would be the case, right? So you can imagine this playing out, even if we intend for Fields to be the starter, right? It would make sense to sign Wilson first and say that we intend for him to be the starter,
Mm-hmm.
because then that's going to give us better leverage in negotiations and stuff. Now I know other teams were in play for Fields as well, so that kind of you know might complicate things here. But allegedly Fields wanted to go to the Steelers, so if we knew that, that could have been helpful as well. Um, anyway, I think Omar Khan might have done some. Well, I don't know. It depends. Maybe it just accidentally worked out nicely for us, but Omar Khan arguably did some pretty sly maneuvering here, I think. And maybe we can get more into that after the break, I think.
And we're back. So you were talking about Omar Khan and his strategizing to get Justin Fields.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it does feel like he might have created some leverage by first signing Wilson and then saying letting slip. I don't know. I actually don't know where that report came from, but it was reported that we were intending for Wilson to be the starter. Uh, that looks like it creates leverage with negotiations with Chicago for Fields, right? How much are we going to give you for a backup quarterback? And by the way, look how much we're paying the starter, 1.2 million, right? So, you know, uh, yeah, it looks like that could have been helpful there. And I don't remember exactly the timeline when it was let slip, or it wasn't officially announced, I don't think, but when it was released that we were intending for Wilson to be the starter. But if that was before we traded for Field, then that would make some sense about you know, why we did things that way.
Mm.
Um, the other thing that I think it does is it gives you some leverage in negotiations with Fields, right? So, like, suppose you really do think Fields could be the long term starter here. He does have this 24, 25, I can't remember, $1 million 50-year option coming up that has to be picked up or not by, I don't know, May or something soon. Um, uh, and I can't imagine we're going to want to pay that, right? But if you say that Wilson's the starter and Fields is now thinking he's going to be the backup for a year, he's not going to have tape for a year to showcase, what he can do better than he did in Chicago. So I think if you give him the option now of signing a multi-year sort of modest deal now, tell him we're not going to pick up your option, but here's, you could sign a multi-year extension and be the backup for a while. Uh, you might have a better chance of him accepting that, right? And so uh, you would do all this. I think this all makes a lot of sense to do, even if Fields was not um, Fields was the plan as the starter long term, right? Um, Not sure that it really was the plan, or again, this is like giving Khan a lot of credit in his negotiations and maneuvering here. But it'll be interesting, I think, to see how this plays out. If it turns into like a camp battle for starter, and if Fields ends up winning, or if he sort of quickly replaces Wilson in the regular season, I could see. I think that makes it more plausible that what Khan was doing here was really angling for Fields in the long run, and just trying to get him for cheaper by doing what he did. I don't know if that's plausible. Again, maybe I'm just giving Omar Khan a lot of credit because I do feel like he's been very shrewd in the brief time I've seen him be our general manager. But that's I'm hoping that he's that shrewd. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I do think the only other like addition I would have to that is that definitely I feel like if they're close, I feel like they would play Russell Wilson just because of keeping that pick a 6 round pick for as long as you know. So like no need to give Fields too many snaps. Now if like Fields looks way better than Wilson, then of course you're willing the 4th round pick is fine. Like who cares? But
Right.
I do, and that like you said might kind of play in your favor because some look at like Mitchell Trubisky when he was on Buffalo. Sitting for a little while sometimes increases people's value as a backup when you're a distressed asset. So, but I wonder if Fields wanting to come to Pittsburgh might have been dampened if he knew he was going to be the backup. Like, how much was he expecting to start there? I don't know, or at least compete for a starting job.
Yeah, that's what I can't. I gotta maybe if I did better research here, I would remember when it was sort of again, it wasn't announced officially, but when it was unofficially announced that we were intending for Wilson to be the starter here, because that sort of definitely informs the plausibility of, you know, well, it informs whether this is uh, strategizing or just sort of accidental on our part that we got Fields for a good deal here. But
I think, I mean, I could be remembering wrong, but I think it was fairly early. I thought, at least I was under the impression they had made it, like people were saying Wilson was going to be the starter before Pickett was traded. So,
yeah, that's kind of my memory too. Um, and so that does, you know, suggest that maybe it was strategic. But you're right about it's a 6th round draft pick unless he plays like 51% of the snaps, and then it's a 4th round draft pick. And I wonder, like only I probably would care about this question, but like, does it round up to 50? Like, what is it? What if it's like 50.25? Right? Does that
yeah,
count?
no, I
Fifty
did
point
think
four
this.
nine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because I remember the reason why I thought of this is because when I think it was that I texting you at some point I wrote, maybe it was on a short that we did I put up, but I wrote something about more than half the snaps, and then I was like, that's actually wrong. Like it has to be 51% of the snaps. And it's like I don't know what they would do as far as rounding. I think they. My assumption is they'd be precise. Like you got to get 51. If you're not at 51, like it doesn't count.
Yeah, 50.99 is not 51, right?
No. Well,
Yeah, I wonder if that'd be
okay.
a case where they have to get to like arbitration or something, right? Like lawyers for both teams get involved or something. So, anyway,
Uh,
yeah, I don't know. Interesting time to be a Steelers fan, definitely. Lots is happening. Lots, lot is happening. Whatever.
and I mean, I guess this question won't be as interesting as had you been a little more distracted. I feel like you're really on board with the changes. You're ready because I was gonna ask like, what is it like? Oftentimes with football fans, we view a lot of our team's identity through the quarterback, and so this is just like a complete change. And like
Yeah,
even from a week ago at this time, what one would be expecting the identity of the team to be, it's like a whole new team almost. And but it seems like that's okay. Like you're feeling all
yeah, I
right
think that's
about it.
right. I think I already had that sort of identity crisis last year a bit when Pickett was out for at different points with Trubisky and then Mason Rudolph getting playing time. Uh, and at that, I think that, it was pretty easy to just shift like this is Tomlin's team, right? And Tomlin is such a character and so like so easy to get behind, at least for me, that it was, okay, I don't care who the quarterback is so much now. I care who the head coach is, and I'll think of him through his eyes, essentially. Um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, I think I'm still doing that. I think primarily in terms of like Tomlin first, but we'll see. If Wilson or Fields is the starter and plays well, I'm sure that will change quickly.
All right. Well, then kind of considering you get a new QB room, you've got Russell Wilson and possibly Justin Fields will be throwing passes, and you've got George Pickens. You kind of got Harris and Jalen Warren. A team is coming together, and someone who I feel like could be really quarterback friendly and would be really helpful is Deontay Johnson. And so, what happened there?
Yeah, I don't know, man. They didn't listen to me, right? I asked them not to trade Deontay Johnson a couple episodes ago, and he's gone now. There were reports that he requested a trade too, and again, like as with Pickett, if that's right, I can't really blame him. You know, he would be a household name in a better offense with a better quarterback, or a better offensive coordinator or something, right? Because he was so routinely open over the last couple of years. It's sort of remarkable to me that he only had two or three touchdowns over that stretch because he should have had many more. So I don't blame him if he did request a trade. I I think part of what could have been playing into that was in our willingness to trade him might have been the lack of effort that he showed on a couple crucial plays last year. I think he'd sort of worn out his welcome with the fans. There was a play that I mentioned earlier where I think Jalen Warren fumbled against the Bengals, maybe, and looked like it was right in front of Deontay Johnson, and he didn't do anything. He just walked by it. Um, uh, so that I think it could have been a kind of case. Again, there's a reading of this where we're like getting rid of the people who don't want to be there, essentially. And if you read the Pickett situation that way and the Deontay Johnson situation that way, then
No
you
hostages,
know,
right?
yes, right. That's Tomlin saying, right? Volunteers, not hostages. So maybe that's what's going on. Uh, I again, I hope Deontay Johnson does well. It's easy since we traded both of them to NFC teams. I can still root for them essentially. Uh, so I hope they both Johnson and Pickett do well where they are. And I think Johnson will do well. I mean, he should. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
He
yeah,
so I don't know if you know, but Chiefs Kingdom is very upset with the Steelers because Deontay Johnson is like that. He might have been number one on my list as like who I would have wanted, especially for the compensation that he got. And apparently, the rumor is that the Steelers did not want to trade him to another AFC contender, which, as you can probably imagine, has led to a lot of rude commentary from the Chiefs about the Steelers considering themselves an AFC contender. They're very frustrated that that the Steelers considered us in their league and so wouldn't give us the player that we wanted.
That is interesting. Yeah, I had heard that there was uh, we did not trade him to the Chiefs because we didn't want to send him to an AFC rival contender. Um, yeah, Deontay Johnson on the Chiefs would have been, I think, really fun to watch. I still think he might be fun on Carolina, but Deontay Johnson on the Chiefs would have been, yeah, I think. I mean, I'm not saying he would have been like Tyreek Hill 2 or something, but it would have been, I think, a major upgrade at
I
wide
think he
receiver.
would have been better than Juju was for us, and Juju was very good for us. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I would slot him in for 1,000 yards easy if he stayed healthy.
yeah, yeah. I would have thought. I mean, he always, he gets injured like once a game, but usually the injuries are like, a couple plays and he's back. So yeah, I think that would have been fun. I'm, and I wouldn't have had that much trouble rooting for him on the Chiefs either. Uh, but I'm fine with him in Carolina, I guess.
I just hope for his sake that Carolina's not another situation where he's open all the time and not getting the ball.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder how he feels now that our quarterback room has changed so radically after we traded
All right,
him.
and then well, we'll see what your opinion is, but my assumption is a little more happy news, at least more clearly unilaterally happy news. Patrick Queen, 3 years, 41 million. What do you make of that signing?
Um, it's exciting, right? I think he was second team All Pro last year. I mean,
Yeah,
he had a good year. And I think it's so. I do have some general kind. I mean, it does seem strange that the Ravens didn't try harder to keep him. I guess that's a bit worrying. Although, again, my Seahawks connection. Mike McDonald's now their, former Ravens defensive coordinator is now their head coach. Apparently, he was interested in signing Queen. So I guess that's a good sign in that respect. Um, but he's exciting. He's definitely more athletic at linebacker than than a lot of the people we've had in a while. Uh, the the plays I remember him making against us last year were often, you know, like cleaning up like check downs, where you would have thought we could get a lot of yardage out off of a check down, Jalen Warren against a linebacker or something like that, but not when Queen was the linebacker. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't looked at his film that much to to know how good he is in coverage. I don't remember seeing. Well, we're probably not going to exploit many coverages. Even if he's not doing well in coverage, we're probably not going to exploit that. So I'd have to look at how he played against other teams in coverage, but um, I guess there could be some sort of concern there, but I'm not sure. Um, I do think it's also a kind of I think it if I'm right about the contract, it's kind of team friendly. I think that the only guaranteed money is like the signing bonus and the salary in the first year, and so if he doesn't pan out, then we don't lose much of anything
oh,
by cutting him.
okay.
Um, so I think yeah, that should be helpful. I mean, our linebacking core was pretty decimated by injuries last year, but before that, they were not that bad. So, upgrading a big upgrade, I think, at linebacker on a unit that started off pretty good before it was hurt. Um, I think is exciting.
Yeah, I remember Patrick Queen. So when he came out in the draft, I was very excited. This was before we had Nick Bolton or Willie Gay. Our linebackers were like Anthony Hitchens and Damian Wilson, and I don't even remember who else was playing linebacker back then. It was not a fun. Ben Neiman was our dime linebacker. Oh, Reggie Ragland, I guess, but he was on his way out. to Detroit. But anyway, like the idea of an athletic linebacker like him was really exciting. We ended up getting Willie Gay in that draft, which I don't regret, but because Patrick Queen was a first rounder. But I remember him being somewhat disappointing for a couple of years before turning it on, which on one hand doesn't scare me that much because that's the Derek Johnson trajectory, and he ended up being like one of the best Chiefs ever. Um,
Mm.
but the only thing that kind of worries me is he had his like big breakout season when he had Roquan Smith next to him, who was playing extremely well also. But Roquan Smith's presence could also be an explainer as to why the Ravens didn't re-sign Queen, because they're committing so much money to him. And when you have a quarterback you're paying as much as they're paying Lamar Jackson, like you can't devote two big contracts to one position group like that. So maybe that's the only reason. I mean, I don't know. I think this is an exciting signing. It's not like you paid him that much, and if he is just took a little while to build like the mental side of the game, then this could be awesome.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's a good point that he had his best year sort of by far playing next to Roquan Smith, and you wonder whether it was better again because he made a leap or because they changed his responsibilities and let Smith take some of the harder coverage decisions or whatever that he didn't have to process last year. So I that is a reason to be a little worried. I think depending on what the backstory is there about why he was so much better last year, and um, but the again, I guess that would come back to the contract being fairly team friendly, and if he doesn't pay, if he's really bad this year or whatever, then we're not on the hook for a while. So,
Yeah. Oh, one other addition I have is on a previous podcast after the AFC Championship game, I was talking about how I felt like the Ravens were trying too hard to play like bully ball and were kind of losing the, basically running themselves out of the game at times. And I talked about a play where Rashee Rice was coming over on the middle and he got nailed without the ball, and the linebacker who tried to hit him, instead of tackling Travis Kelsey, who ended up getting a first down on that play, made a mistake. And I slandered Roquan Smith. I said it was Roquan Smith. It was actually Patrick Queen that did that. That hit Rashee
oh,
Rice
good.
instead of trying to make the tackle, and Travis Kelsey converted a 3rd and 4 or something. So
Yeah, I do think I was watching some film on him. Uh, for Steelers fans out there, Steelers underscore DB. If you follow him on Twitter, he does some really nice film breakdowns, and he was pointing out that there were a couple times last year he made some significant mistakes in uh, biting on play action or that kind of thing, leaving huge gaps, making basically the wrong decision in coverage in like high leverage situations where it ends up being a big play because he made the wrong decision. So I mean, that's going to happen. You can't. I think that's going to happen to any linebacker, right? But you know,
except
if
Fred
you have
Warner.
to make these split-second decisions. Sorry, what?
I said except Fred
Except,
Warner. I'm
yeah,
still
that's right. Yeah,
feeling the Super Bowl effects by playing against Fred Warner.
yeah. It never makes the wrong decision somehow. Um, uh, but yeah, I think that it's exciting, but also yeah, I agree there are reasons to be a little for a little bit of trepidation. Uh, well, that's a lot about the Steelers. Do you want to talk some about the Chiefs? They haven't
Yeah.
stuff has happened there too.
All right. Yeah. Let's do it.
Um, so I guess my first question is just stuff has happened with uh, Chris Jones and legit. Well, stuff has kind of happened with Jerry Sneed. Do you have thoughts of? Do you want to bring us up to speed and express any thoughts about where things stand now?
Yeah. I think Chris Jones kind of got what we talked about. Like we had said in our, I don't even remember how many podcasts ago now. We had said something like 3 years, 90 million, or 3 years, 95, and yes, the deal is a 5 year deal, but practically it's a 3 year, $95 million deal when you look at the guarantees. So it was right around, I don't know why there were reports that he was going to go in for 27 or 28 million a year. Like At the time, it didn't make sense to us, and clearly it was not correct because the Chiefs ended up giving him an average of 31.75 million, which is above the Aaron Donald mark at 31.6 million, which is what we were talking about, was kind of what he was aiming for. Um, it does make me sad that his agents, who I feel like did such a terrible job last year, ended up. I mean, they had all the leverage this year, you know. So for as badly as they did, they ended up winning. And well, I think the Chiefs did the mature thing and letting someone who's not Chris Jones, his agents, letting someone who stinks win because it's better for you sometimes. It's a good life lesson that sometimes by letting someone else win, you do what's better for you too, even though it feels terrible. And that's what happened in that negotiation. Hopefully, we're really paying him for his year 30, 31, and 32 seasons. So hopefully he doesn't have too much of a drop off. And if he plays like he has the last 3 years, it'll be well worth it. The Snead situation has gotten a lot hairier since the last time we talked. Uh, at that, initially it really seemed like we were either going to sign him to a long-term deal or we were going to trade him. Then we restructured Mahomes' contract, and I had said in the short that I recorded about that one of the reasons might have been to open up space for 1-year deals. You don't really do that to open up like long-term deals because by restructuring, you're pushing cap into the future, and we tend to make year one cap hits really low. So it felt like we were opening up stuff for 1-year deals, maybe just allowing for the possibility of the franchise tag with L'Jarius Sneed as some more leverage. What it sounds like is a combination of teams not offering the draft capital that we want and Snead wanting way more money than they're willing to pay. And the relative contributions of those, I'm not sure. I've heard that we haven't even been offered a second round pick, but it's possible that part of that is because of the amount that the team would be paying Snead. That maybe if he asked for less money, maybe we would get a second round pick as an offer. So the Chiefs are clearly now preparing for the eventuality, not the eventuality, but the possibility at least that he will stay and play on the franchise tag. And for those people that are saying that Snead wouldn't do that, he's only made like $4 million in his career. I'd be really surprised if he turned down a 1-year, $19.8 million contract. So yeah, that situation got more complicated. It seems like as more time passes, the less likely it is that Snead gets traded.
Yeah, I was
Um,
going to ask about that, about whether you think he would not sign the franchise tag and just not sit out a year like Le'Veon Bell did. But I think you're right to point out, I guess, that he has a lot more to gain in terms of career earnings. They can like quadruple them
yeah.
by playing 1 year on the franchise tag. Do you think? Uh, well, okay, yeah, maybe. Uh, I mean, at this point, it looks more likely that you'll have. Well, definitely we'll have Jones, and maybe we'll have Snead for at least a year, which should be exciting, right? I mean, uh, how are you feeling about the Snead situation in general at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy. Like, I'd still rather have Snead than not. Like, it doesn't seem like Snead's cap number right now is precluding us from doing anything that we want to do. Like, that would be the only situation where I'd be really pushing, let's get this trade done and move on. We cleared up enough cap room. We have him on the tag. If he's gonna not be tradable at with compensation we want, I'd be happy to have him back. I mean, his leverage is only going to get worse next year with him being a year older. Although his cap number will go up for the franchise tag, so maybe we wouldn't tag him. So then he'd have more leverage.
Mm.
I think the other concern with Snead is he's had this kind of chronic knee issue that has not really had him miss a lot of time, but he was on the injury report like all year. And then the second part of that is like last year, for as good as Snead was, and I really do feel like he has been good for several years, he was like number one superstar corner for 1 year, you know. and we know that corner production is about as variable as any position in the league. You know, good corners have really bad years sometimes too. So maybe teams aren't willing to kind of bank on that 1 year of kind of elite production.
Mm, yeah, but it does sound like the reports are that he wants to be paid as the top cornerback in the league. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what people are saying. I mean, and but reports are also saying he wants to be in Kansas City. So
Okay.
I wonder if part of it is he's like, if I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna get paid. You know, if I'm gonna get a little less than that, then I might as well do it in Kansas City. I mean, that's one potential read of what his thought process is.
Yeah, it's so nice when you have someone like Mahomes to like incentivize everyone to want to stay in Kansas City, right? Because it's just like, why would you leave? You're probably going to win more Super Bowls, right?
Yeah, let's hope so.
I guess that's what the Patriots had with Brady for so long there. Okay, so my other questions are maybe not so much about the present state of the Chiefs as opposed to just questions about your experiences with the Chiefs. But if there's anything else on the present state of the Chiefs that you wanted to comment on, I should give you the opportunity.
Um, I will just say that I think that the Hollywood Brown signing, if he stays healthy, is not being considered enough by people nationally as far as how useful this could be for our offense. I think that he's not just a deep threat. He can win on all three levels of the field, and we honestly have not had a receiver that can do that since Tyreek Hill. And Hollywood Brown is no Tyreek Hill, but even Juju was kind of stuck in the short and intermediate range, and he's been the most reliable receiver we've had since Tyreek. I mean, I feel very good about Hollywood Brown's ability to open up this offense so that it wouldn't look like last year's. And so, and I cannot believe we got him for 1 year, 7 million. Like it's up to 11 with incentives, and that's probably part of the 1 year. You know, we're talking about clearing up cap space for 1 year contract. I mean, he must have really. I can't imagine someone didn't offer him better than that. But I think he thinks that with a year with Mahomes, he can really raise his stock and get paid next year.
Mhm. So that's going to be a kind of yeah. I mean, it seems like having one receiver like that that can win at all three levels it should open up a lot for the rest of the offense and offense too. So if you've got yeah, that's the kind of thing that it does seem like it could be just one missing piece, and then suddenly it's this super dynamic offense again. Not like it wasn't dynamic last year, but it definitely had its moments where it was not dynamic.
Yeah.
um, uh, for example, against Denver. But yeah, and that does seem that's a good point. Exactly, and that's the kind of thing that you would have. Uh, DeAndre Johnson would have done that nicely too, right? Opened up all three levels of the field.
Oh,
Of
he
course,
would have. Oh, yes.
I can sense what's the word I'm looking for? There's something in your voice there that I'm hearing. um, yeah. Well, sorry that we didn't trade to you, but it would have been fun to watch. So, okay, let me go on and then ask a couple other Chiefs related questions. Uh, so one is just, you asked me, and this opened up a whole can of worms for me personally. But what's one play from your lifetime of watching the Chiefs that you would change if you could go back and change it?
Well, so I feel like most Chiefs fans. I was thinking like I feel like the number one like regular Chiefs fan answer would be D Ford being offsides in that AFC title game. If he wasn't offsides, we would have gone to the Super Bowl. Um, and I think number two would probably have been something in the AFC title game against Cincinnati. Maybe that at the end of the first half when we weren't able to score because Mahomes threw like an out route to Tyreek Hill and he got tackled in bounds and time ran out. Um, and it was 21-10 at that point, and it ended up being 24-24 and then going into overtime. So if we had scored a touchdown there, if we had scored one more point at some point in the like we would have won that game. So, but I will not pick either one of those actually, because I feel like I'm very much getting into like the whole butterfly effect thing with Mahomes. Like I'm so happy with how things have gone. Like, you know, if we win the Super Bowl in 18, we might not get Spagnuolo. And then I don't know if like we have the same kind of run we've had since then. So 21 is a little up and down, but if we had, you know, won that game in 21, maybe we don't trade Tyreek and maybe we don't have Trent McDuffie. And so I don't know. I'm happy with how things have gone in the Mahomes era. So I feel like to change a play, I have to go before the Mahomes era. I don't really want to change anything. Winning 3 Super Bowls so far has been fantastic. I'll take what I can take. Um, so I guess like honorable mention here would be the only reason I'm not picking this is I didn't actually watch this game. It predated my Chiefs viewing by 1 year. This was the end of the 1995 season. Um, I Chiefs fans don't normally say the name of this player, but I feel like we won 3 Super Bowls, so we can relax a little bit. They refer to him as the kicker or that kicker, but his name's Lynn Elliott, and we were playing the Colts in a divisional round game in Kansas City, and Lynn Elliott missed 3 field goals in a game that we lost 10-7. And all 3 field goals were 42 yards or less or fewer. So if I had to pick one of those, I think it would be the last one, which was a 42-yarder, which was on our last drive of the game, which could have tied it at 10-10, and he missed that one. But um, yeah, it's a very. The Chiefs have had a lot of traumatic Colts games in our history. So, well, that one is that would be the honorable mention. Number 3 for me, I don't know why I assumed you're giving me 3. I think you said 1, right?
Oh
But
yeah, well you can do three. That's more entertaining actually.
so for me, number 3 would be 1997, the end of this 97 year in the divisional playoffs. We were playing the Denver Broncos at home. This was the first full Chiefs season I watched, and I was really invested because in the regular season we beat the Broncos at home on a 54-yard field goal by Pete Stoyanovich at the end of the game. So I remember just being like, "Oh my God, Elway's coming back, and we're gonna beat him." And we ended up losing 14-10 in what would be a long streak of home losses. For little did I know at that time how much we were going to lose in the playoffs. But in the third quarter, at that time we were down 7-0. Tony Gonzalez caught a pass in the corner of the end zone that he is adamant he got both feet down, and he believes that instant replay was instituted because of this play that was called an incomplete pass. And we ended up kicking a field goal on that drive. But had we scored there, I mean, assuming the game played out like it did from there, like that would have been enough points to tie at that point. So that's probably number 3, partially just because of how much more emotional you are about these games when you're that young, and that game just sticks in my head still. Um, Number 2 for me is the end of the 2013 season. Another Colts game. This was the game where you may remember the Chiefs were up 38-10 in the third quarter, and we lost 45-44 to Andrew Luck.
Hmm.
That was not good. But the play that I remember and would want to change is, so people forget that Jamal Charles went out in the first quarter due to a concussion. And we had the ball. I think it was like at the Indy, it was like close to the 50, like probably like around their 40-yard line. And Alex Smith we were up 41-31 at this point. Like the comeback is on from the Colts, but we like still have a little room. It's the fourth quarter starting. Like if we score in this drive, it's going to look pretty good. Alex Smith has Cyrus Gray, our third string running back, because our second string running back could not run routes out of the backfield. Not well, anyway, Niall Davis. So he has him on a wheel route, and he's wide open. Like he's going to walk in for a touchdown. And Alex Smith overthrows him. And I will, to this day, believe it's because he's practiced that route with Jamal Charles, who's one of the fastest players in the league. And he threw it like he was throwing it to Jamal Charles and overthrew Cyrus Gray. And if we had scored there to go up 48-31, I feel like we win that game. Like that's enough for us to win. In that game also, we had that stupid play where Andrew Luck or Donald Brown fumbled at the goal line, and it went. Eric Berry hit him. He fumbled at the goal line, and it went back to Andrew Luck, who ran it in himself for the
Oh
touchdown.
yeah, I forgot about that
So,
play. Oh gosh, yeah, that's a
so
painful one.
I could have picked that one from like the emotion standpoint, but I think like practically game situation wise, I'd rather have that touchdown from Cyrus Gray.
Mm.
And then number one, it was a game that unfortunately I attended in person. That would be in the 20 after the 2017 year in the playoffs. Again, this was against the Titans, run by the formidable Marcus Mariota, and we were up 21-3 this time. And this time it was Travis Kelce that was concussed early in the game, and he missed the game. And we could not score any points without Travis Kelce that year. I should have known how important he was to our team at that point. Uh, so we were up 21-3, but the play that I remember that still, I feel like it's one of the most underrated ref mistakes. Like, people don't ever talk about this play, but it's one of the dumbest plays I've ever seen. We're up 14-0. The Titans are in our territory, and on third down, Mariota just gets lit up by Derek Johnson and fumbles the ball, but they blow the play dead because they called his forward progress impeded. And if I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to someone who hasn't watched this
Yeah,
play, but like, by this definition, every sack would be forward progress impeded, and no one would ever have a sack fumble because, like, it's basically like Johnson just hits it. Like, it's not like it was a prolonged. He just nails him and takes him to the ground, and Mariota fumbles it. Like,
yeah,
and Jeff Triplett, how he got away with being like forward progress was impeded, even in the pool report at the end of the game, he stood by the decision. Like, I, I just can't believe that this wasn't like this was as bad to me as like the fail Mary in the Packers Seahawks game that like it became news for like a week. Like, unfortunately, it wasn't at the end of the game. Like, it was in the second quarter when we were up 14-0 and everyone thought we were going to win. But they ended up kicking a field goal on that drive, and they beat us by 1 point. So
mm.
it would have been
I
nice
remember
to
that
have
play.
that.
I remember. I mean, you were there. I remember that play, thinking like, how could you call that? Yeah, that was the most inexplicable, one of the most, maybe the most inexplicable call I've ever seen.
Oh
It's definitely in the
man,
top five. Um, uh, yeah, because that would mean every sack would be a case of like a forward progress
or
case.
almost like
Maybe
any
any hit.
tackle. Yeah, any
Yeah,
tackle where the guy isn't seriously like clearly running forward is forward progress being impeded. It's crazy. And I know we got to take a break, but just the last thing I will say is that the kind of emotional, like we had the Andrew Luck emotional play. The emotional play from this game was the Marcus Mariota throwing a touchdown pass to himself because he threw a pass at Darrell Revis, who people forget was a Chief for a year, knocked the ball down, but he knocked it right back to Marcus Mariota, who caught it and ran it right into the end zone for a touchdown. So that was fun.
what a game.
Anyway,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
a painful game.
On that wonderful note, let's take a break.
All right, we'll be back.
And we're back.
Awesome. I wanted to follow up on the discussion we just had at the end there about the plays you would change in Chiefs history. Because I thought it was really interesting. I wondered if you were going to do something like this where you didn't want to change anything from the whole Mahomes era because of how well it's gone. And so you go further back. Um, but I guess the risk of going further back is that you change something then and you don't even get Mahomes, right? You don't even draft Mahomes. So I mean, this really just gets to a question about how you want to evaluate the counterfactual like this. Like, if that play had gone differently, what? Like, how far do you sort of extend the hypothetical scenario there, right? And so, I mean, maybe this just relates to the point of asking the question in the first place. But I guess it sounded like you were taking the point to be something like, what is a play that was either incredibly significant or incredibly like in terms of the outcome for the Chiefs, or just incredibly emotionally significant for me as a fan. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I definitely went kind of more outcome based, even more. Although the two kind of run together, but I picked all playoff games that were like big playoff losses. So yeah, I think the outcome was the most important metric.
Right, but it's the like the short term outcome, and not like my life as a Chiefs fan since then or something like that, because you don't want to
No, that's
extend the
true. I
hypothetical too
mean,
far.
yeah, if extended completely, then yeah, I think I wouldn't change anything. By
Right.
that logic, I'm very happy with everything. But yeah, for whatever reason in my head, I decided that each like the Mahomes era is this discrete, immutable thing that if I don't change anything within it, then I'm not changing it at all. And if we go before it, then it doesn't affect the Mahomes era. I don't know why I made that assumption, but I did.
Yeah, no, I mean it's cool. I mean it's incredibly different from like my situation as a Steelers fan right now. There are plenty like I'm not overjoyed with the way things are right now, so there's plenty of things that I would be happy to change since about 2009 onwards, maybe. Uh, uh, if I go further back than that, then I start to worry that I'm going to take away one of the Super Bowl wins or something. So yeah, it's a strange situation to be in where like it's so good right now. It's like I don't want to tweak anything because that just ruins what we have right now, or could ruin
Yeah,
what we have right
yeah, and
now.
even if they were like, if you were like, there's a just needs to be a non-zero chance you could ruin anything, I'd just be like, no, like I'm good. Like let's just keep
Yeah.
everything the way it was. Like it's all right. I I I am curious though, like what how important does something have to be for you not want to ruin? Like, would you be okay with preserving the Super Bowls, doing it after that, but you miss like Ben's back-to-back 6 touchdown games?
Yeah. Uh, it depends on I think what how good uh the the it depend on what does changing that play get me, right? If it gets us a third Super Bowl, like if we win against the Packers, um, then I think it's worth it. Like I would forego the double six touchdown games, but those are pretty cool, right? I mean,
Nobody's
I
ever
still
done them.
relive those. I know, and I still watch those highlights like probably once a year or something, just because it's so fun, right? Those like just he was at the top of his game right there. Yeah, so I think that's I would trade those for a Super Bowl, but there's not a lot of things I would trade those for. um, well, that's interesting. That's a good
I
point.
have another question. This is like getting really tangent. I totally am aware of that this episode is going to go very long, but I cannot help myself to ask this question now that you brought it up. Do you ever get to a point where there are highlights that are old enough that you don't watch them as much anymore, or you don't derive the same pleasure as watching a more recent highlight?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think even some of our highlights from like 2005, the playoff run there, are like the game was pretty different then, and what looked like an awesome play at the time now looks like that ball was way behind, or like uh, uh, so I don't know. I think my opinion of what's a good play has changed, and I don't know if that's so much that the game has changed or just that I now have hopefully somewhat more nuanced opinions about what good quarterback play looks like. Um, back then it was like, are we scoring or are we moving the ball? If so, that's great
Mm.
quarterback play. And now I think I have a better sense of that's an amazing throw even if it didn't get caught or whatever. Um, so I think yeah, I think my some of those old highlights are less exciting. And some things that I maybe wasn't excited about at the time. If I could find them now, I might be excited about by them now, right? Like that throw or whatever. I mean, this is true even. Um, it's true in reverse too, right? So now, right, having several years of really subpar quarterback play, going back and looking at just you know then fairly routine passes from Ben to Brown, for example. Some of those are just like they now strike me as like holy cow, that's just incredible. Um, Whereas at the time it's like, yep, that's just that's what you can expect. So I think that it works both ways. Like highlights that I before was really impressed by, now I'm sometimes less impressed by, and vice versa. Do you have the same experience?
Yeah, I definitely have the like highlights I wasn't impressed by at the time that I'm now impressed by, uh, and vice versa. Things that I thought were really cool that I realized were not as cool. But and this is gonna like this is gonna sound so bad to say. Like I can't believe we have become these kinds of fans, us Chiefs fans. But it's kind of like when you watch like 2018 Mahomes, you're kind of like I've seen that a lot now. Like it's just like it's some of, and to be fair, like it's that's not entirely true because he would try throws then that he doesn't try as much now. Like there's this throw he made in Oakland. It was still in Oakland back then against the Raiders where he just like slung one to Demetrius Harris, and it's one where on like the TV copy, like the regular view, like you can't really tell how it got in there. Like it's just like it's in his hands somehow, and you're just like, what happened? And you watch the replay from the end zone view, and you can kind of see how he fit it in the gap. So there's stuff like that, but there's certain Mahomes highlights that I've watched so many times. You're almost just kind of like I'm more interested in the more recent stuff. Like the things that I've only seen like 20 times instead of 150.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I don't know. So it, but I wonder, now that Ben has retired, I wonder if it's easier to go back and like once I don't have Mahomes anymore because you always have the next one. That's the thing with, there's always the next one. There's always something newer and fresher, and they keep coming. And so then the old ones just kind of get put back into a place where you revisit them every once in a while, but it's not as exciting.
Yeah, but when they're gone, when they're done, then you can sort of look back and reappreciate them. I think that's happening for me with Ben now, and especially I think with the contrast of the quarterback play we've had for a little while now. I sort of reappreciate how amazing some of his plays were, some of his throws were. Um, but again, also I look back at the 2005 playoffs, and I think some of those throws were like they were okay, but we scored. That's what mattered, but they weren't the best. um, so I guess I got a little bit less enamored with some of the highlights like that too. But but he was really good for a while, and those are fun to watch.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So I have another Chiefs question here for you, which I gave you time to plan because I mentioned it was coming. But could you give me, and this is maybe overly restrictive, feel free to broaden it if you like, but your top three single game performances of Patrick Mahomes' career?
So you told me about this, and I've been dreading this. Like, I I don't know. I mean, this is very very difficult. But I've at least like decided on a couple ground rules that I'm going to arbitrarily set for myself. First, I'm eliminating Super Bowls because, like, obviously, like he played really well in crucial moments in all of our Super Bowl wins, and like, of course, those are the ones that mean the most because we won the Super Bowl. So I feel like those are a little too easy. So I'm going to eliminate those. And then I'm also going to eliminate games from like the first half of his first season because these are the games that were like, oh my God, we have somebody. Like it was those like you realize like this may be special, but like, maybe just had a good game. And so anything from the first half of his first season, I'm going to eliminate. And what I'm really thinking about are like the his first game when we beat the Chargers 38-20, and it's not so much of the game as the moment. Like he threw a touch pass to Anthony Sherman who was our fullback on a wheel route. It was like a 40-yard touchdown. And like I remember being like, all right, we knew this is like a kid with a really strong arm, and he'd thrown a laser to Tyreek already for a touchdown, like a slant. And he threw that pass, and I was like, oh, he might be like really good. Like, not just like this guy with a strong arm, but like he just threw like a 40-yard touch pass touchdown to our fullback. Like, this might be like something I'm not ready for. Like, and then the next week, apologies when he threw 6 touchdowns against the Steelers.
I knew
And
this was it six? I thought it was seven.
it was 6. He hasn't
Okay,
done 7 yet,
okay, maybe I
unfortunately.
just inflated it.
Like that. So like games like, and then he comes back the next week, and his first touchdown at home was him like running back and forth in the backfield against the 49ers and hitting Chris Conley on the run in the end zone. And it was just like, so Anyway, as I describe these things, I'm telling you that I'm not going to include them because I'm disqualifying them because of the just like unbelievable ascent that it was and how crazy it was. All right. I will do my best to get us to three. Um, well, I know I'm not going to do three because I'm combining two games in one. But so the games to me, and I'm trying to make them just more like memorable, like maybe not objectively his best games, but they're games that were particularly meaningful. Um, and I think the first one I'll say is in the 2020 season, we went to New Orleans and we didn't have Mitchell Schwartz was hurt like all year, so we didn't have a right tackle. His backup Mike Remmers got hurt, so we ended up having to put our guard at the time, Andrew Wiley, who's now like a right tackle and is being paid a lot of money as a right tackle, but before that point had never played right tackle in the NFL. He was our right tackle, and our left tackle Eric Fisher was having back problems, so he wasn't 100%. And the Saints came in and basically just tried to punch us in the mouth. They were playing like as physical a game as I've seen played against us, and it's a tactic that used to work. Like it's what the Ravens tried to do in the AFC title game, but like it doesn't work on us anymore. But back then it was a little more questionable. And Mahomes just, oh man, he was just on fire. Like, and other parts of the game like really tried to lose. Like Demarcus Robinson returned a punt because our punt returners were all hurt at the time. He caught a punt. I'm not lying. Like, I'm pretty sure he ran at least 15 yards backwards, like, while trying to run sideways. And in the process of trying to evade defenders, fumbled so badly that the ball went backwards and ended up in the end zone. And the Saints, like, fortunately weren't able to dive on it, but knocked it out of the back of the end zone for a safety. Like, that we were dominating that game offensively. I think we had the ball for like 43 minutes by the end. And at one point, the Saints were up 15-14 because what the rest of the team was doing. But we ended up winning that game. Mahomes had like a beautiful corner touchdown pass to McCole Hardman. He ran an option that he pitched to Le'Veon Bell, and who scored a touchdown in that game. Uh, and he had one like really amazing throw in our territory to Sammy Watkins. Like he just was wheeling and dealing. And the reason why that game is so significant to me is it was like the probably peak immortality feeling where we were like maybe nothing at all can stop Patrick Mahomes. Like the offensive line is decimated. He's still, this is a really good football team. We went to their house and we beat them, and they were playing so physically. I mean, that ended up not being true because we lost the Super Bowl to the Bucks in a similar situation. We lost basically we were as decimated and lost Eric Fisher also for the Bucks Super Bowl. But that's one of the reasons I thought we were going to win that game because of how well he played against the Saints. So that game I will always remember, just because he just actually felt unstoppable. Like it was superhuman. Um,
Yeah, those are the ones you remember, right? That those cases where it's like I don't think we can lose with the way he's playing right now. Ben gave us a few of those times over the course of his career, and those are the ones that I think back on really when I'm reminiscing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not that's the emotional part because I don't know that his stat line was like stellar. Like he made it, and it was one of those where it was like you can tell even when we were moving the ball, like it was hard, but he was doing it. Like he had to make great throws, and he was making great throws. Like it was just yeah, that was awesome. Um, then for number two, I'm gonna combine two games because they're similar in their like how they looked and they were against the same team in the same place in consecutive years, and that's 2021 and 2022 are games in LA against the Chargers. 2021, like that was the game where Herbert was like wheeling and dealing. We ended up like coming down and tying the game at the end. Herbert actually, everyone forgets when they complain about the overtime rules, but Herbert had a minute and a half to come down and kick a field goal and win, and could not. And we get the ball first in overtime, move it down, and he throws a touchdown pass to Travis Kelce like a 30-yard touchdown. Actually, it was the exact same play that, if you remember, in regulation against the 49ers, when Travis Kelsey caught like a long pass and got down to the 10-yard line, and we like had one shot to score after that. It
Mm,
was the same play. Actually,
yeah.
we're going to run the same play again in the next Chargers game that I'm going to lump together, that Travis Kelsey again scored, this time running away from Derwin James to win it at the end. Like both of those games, like this was peak, like everyone's ready for Herbert to take over. 2021, we were having a down year. I think that game was actually for first place in the division, and we ended up winning in overtime. It was also the last NFL on Fox Thursday night game with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Not that that's that significant, but I might as well add more to it if I can. Um, and so that those back to back, like two times when the Chargers really wanted to get us. And 2021, they had beaten us in Kansas City earlier that year, so it was really big for us to maintain our dominance over the division and get them back. And then the 2022, to put the cherry on top again, like we went in and beat them, like, and they played really well, and Herbert played really well, and it was just like, you're not going to beat him. You're not going to beat Patrick Mahomes today. Like, it's not going to happen. We're going to go and we're going to take your lunch in your building, and it's just the best. Like, so those two combined, like, and one was a Thursday night, one was a Sunday night game, like prime time, going to LA, beating the Chargers. Loved both of those games. Um,
Yeah. I think
uh,
just to jump in on that, I mean, like those are also the kinds of moments that, like, you can imagine probably Mahomes feels extra motivated, right? Because like Herbert's getting all this talk. Let's show who really knows what they're doing here. And even if Herbert comes out slinging it, like, Mahomes comes out on top still. So I mean, those are, you can tell, I think, when they get a little extra juice because they're showing up against someone that's getting a lot of hype. I think, again, like, of those two six touchdown games, the first one that Ben had was against Andrew Luck, when he was like very much hyped up at that point, and it was a similar kind of situation where it's like, yeah, okay, like I'm the old guy here or whatever, and this new guy's getting all the hype, but I can still play, right? Let me remind you, it's pretty awesome.
yeah, that's exactly it. Like, and it's amazing how they can raise their level in those kinds of situations. Like, they just have somewhere else to go and they can get there. And well, on that note, all right. Well, I feel like I got to name two more. Um, one of them is, we're going to 2020 again, and this is like, I believe this was week 3, Monday Night Football. We go to Baltimore, and this is Lamar Jackson coming off of his MVP season. Everybody's like, oh, Mahomes may have won the Super Bowl last year, but Lamar got number 1 on the NFL player vote thing. Mahomes was number 4 after winning the Super Bowl. But Lamar was the MVP, and everybody was like, Mahomes didn't have to beat Lamar in the playoffs. And we went there, and man, we just handed it to them. Like, it ended up like getting to one possession in the fourth quarter, but then we sealed it with an extra touchdown. Like, they never had the ball with a one possession game in the second half. And Mahomes was just wheeling and dealing. Like, I don't remember. I think we had 27 points at halftime or something. Like, it was something ridiculous like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, Mahomes went into Baltimore, and there was no crowd. It was COVID. And so, like, in this silent stadium, we're just beating up on the Ravens. And that was awesome. It was just like, oh, okay. So, and this was probably the first time in my NFL fandom that I really became aware of, like, Andy Reid saving the good play. Because we had played, actually, Herbert for the first time the week before, but at that time he was an unknown rookie who randomly got in the game because Tyrod Taylor, the doctor, gave him pneumothorax,
Oh
basically
yeah.
punctured the outer lining outside his lung and made his lung collapse when he was trying to give him a nerve block. So Herbert randomly started and played really well, and we almost lost that game. And so I was like, what happened to our offense? And then it was like, oh, this Andy Reid saving the big plays for the good games. And this was one of those. Mahomes was just awesome. And we burned Marcus Peters on a double move, which was nice for a touchdown. Um, so yeah, that was big. And then the last one I will say is from this year, when in the weirdly to me, like obviously it's not the most important game and maybe not the most memorable. The Super Bowl might be, but I eliminated those. But to me, it was going into Buffalo and beating Josh Allen in the divisional round, the playoffs. Like our offense was up and down all year. We've heard it from Bills fans for ages that like we don't ever have to go to Buffalo and win. Like they forget we went in 2020 and we beat them, but then the excuse was there's no crowd then, so you have to be there in the full experience. Mahomes has never won a playoff game in on the road because he'd never played a playoff game on the road. Now he's never lost a playoff game on the road. But going in there and man, again, like we were dealing. Like the offense looked so good. We went in and beat Josh Allen and the Bills. Like that game, oh, that was so satisfying. Like, I mean, I loved going into Baltimore and winning in the AFC title game too. Like, and I'm not even like dinging it any more than that, but that Bills win was just so satisfying.
Yeah, probably. I would imagine that being extra satisfying compared to the AFC Championship, just because of Mahomes' performance in it, right? Like in the AFC Championship was a tighter game, not as
Yeah.
I don't feel like the offense was clicking as much there as it was against the Bills. Is this the maybe this is the game before? Re, I sent you a tweet about like the Chiefs offense being anemic all season or most of the season, and then waking up in the playoffs, and it was it was some there was some foul language in it, and you played it in a setting where there were children around. I'm just gonna say. I can't remember if this was
Oh
the
yeah.
game that was in reference to or not, but
No, I think that was the Dolphins game.
oh, okay.
Yeah, it was the week before.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been sort of dormant for long stretches of the season. Maybe they'll suck in the playoffs, and then the Chiefs in the playoffs. Guess what? They'll leave off the bad part there. Yeah, it's pretty
yeah.
awesome to see them turn it on.
Uh, but there're just so many. Like you know, mm, I did include multiple, two I think 6 touchdown games, 3 or 4 or 5 touchdown games. Like it's just, there have been so many, but yeah, I mean, he just keeps delivering. It's amazing, and some of those are just so impactful. Like man, I still can't believe like looking back on it. It's so weird that our best playoff run from like difficulty standpoint was the year that we were the worst of all the teams that won the Super Bowl. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've got more to look forward to. I think with Mahomes, you're gonna have years of this feelings like this. Of God, I guess we're just unstoppable, and it probably will wax and wane some, right? I mean, it probably has already. Um, Although I don't know, like maybe the Buck Super Bowl was the first time it waned a bit. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So the Bucks Super Bowl, and then the year after losing the AFC Championship game.
Yeah. Um, that's pretty nice that that you've had like that level of sustained uh, dominance. Um,
I mean,
uh,
our worst result with Patrick Mahomes is ending regulation in the AFC Championship game tied, and like he's never lost in regulation in the AFC title game. That even that has not happened.
that's just hard to fathom. uh, oh gosh, getting back to the AFC Championship game, we haven't done that since 2016, and that didn't go so well back then. Yeah, yeah, it's another world that you're living in, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Um, well, how do you want? Do you want to go on to some general NFL stuff,
Yeah,
or
sure.
what do you think?
Yeah, maybe I can ask you a question. Well, oh, this is a nice segue from what we were just talking about, actually. So, we had talked last time about some records that Ben Roethlisberger holds, and I ended up getting into a back and forth with a commenter on TikTok, um, who commented on the video. You know, the first two things that we had set as records. The first one was most wins by a quarterback in their rookie season to like, and the second one was most wins by a quarterback regular season in their first 5 seasons. And the commenter was like, those two, wins and losses are not a player stat, so those aren't records. Like, why did you include those? And the back and forth, honestly, the back and forth is on me because I should have realized the intent of this commenter when one of the points they made was, well, Brandon Merriweather went 16-0 as a rookie. And I said, well, maybe we can agree on the fact that a quarterback's contribution to winning is a little different from a rookie DB. And the response was, both were rookies. I'm like, well, that is true. That is true. um, anyway, but it brings back, like, it's something I've kind of like skirted around on previous episodes, the concept of a winning player. How much do we attribute wins and losses to individual players? And particularly, I'm thinking about somebody who kind of may statistically lag behind top players at their position and yet is always on a team that wins. Like Alex Smith is the example that comes to mind for me. Like, he managed to win a lot of games even though he wasn't necessarily like a top statistical quarterback. I'm not really talking about like the short spurt things like Tim Tebow or Vince Young had his little run. I mean, really mean like in a larger sample size, like, do you believe in the idea that there are certain players that just have qualities that contribute to winning in a way that other players that put up similar or better statistics don't have?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I think especially at the quarterback position, I think I mean, I agree that it's a team sport, and judging a quarterback just based on their wins is not a great idea. But if anyone on the team is going to be judged by their wins, it should be the quarterback, right? Um, uh, it's just so much more of a significant position in terms of the outcome of the game. And I agree if you're trying to evaluate like a particular play, or it's hard to know sometimes if it was the quarterback's fault or the wide receiver's fault, or if it was the scheme's fault, or who knows, or just someone on the defense made a great play. But over a long time, you can get this. If it's a long enough stretch where this quarterback keeps winning, I think you have to think that, yeah, they've got something. They've got a sort of extra gear or something, that they're an extra level of competitiveness that they can reach. Uh, and they, and, I mean, comparing, for example, Ben with Pickett, right? And there's just a level that Ben got better often when the situations were like really tense, and Pickett does not seem to, right? Again, I guess the hope was that he keeps working on it and does get there, but um, I think that there are players that can elevate their team just like that, right? Like you're saying, Alex Smith did. Yeah, so I do think thinking about the quarterback and their wins and losses is a legitimate thing. I don't think you would talk about um, a wide receiver's wins and losses. Right? It just doesn't make as much sense there. But the quarterback is so central to how the team plays. If you have such a run of success for a long time, then I think you do have to admit that, yeah, they're doing something, right? They've got it. They've got something that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for people that have got that, whatever that is. I don't know. That's not very well articulated, but what do you think?
No, I tend to agree exactly with the sentiment that you're conveying. Like, I think that to me, I don't think a win loss record for the quarterback is like necessarily the number one thing I look at, or maybe even two or three, but it is, especially over a career, a long period of time. Like, ultimately, the goal of the game is to win. Not to go Herm Edwards on everyone, but you play to win the game. Um, and so, like, that's what everyone is trying to do, is to cultivate attributes and to use attributes that contribute to winning. And it, I just don't think at some point it's not an accident. Like, obviously the coach matters. Obviously the rest of the team matters, and head to heads are a little more dicey, right? Because then you're taking in a smaller sample size by definition. People don't play each other 100 times in a career, and the rest of the structure of the team matters. But when you just look at over someone's career, were they able to do things and able to contribute to winning? Like, yeah, I do think it matters. It shouldn't be. I think what happened is like old school football people used to only look at wins and losses, and then people started being like, well, it's a team sport, and that's true. But I feel like they've overcorrected as if pretending like wins and losses don't matter. Like they still matter. Like that in basketball, a lot of analysts use the term good stats, bad team player. Like a guy who like will always put up a lot really good stats and his team never wins. And it's like at some point that's not a coincidence. I even think with like the head to head stuff, like at some point with a large enough sample, it's not a coincidence, you know. When two people are really equivalent, eventually the tide like Brady beat Manning a lot, and then Manning started beating Brady at the end of their careers. You know, like if you're as good as somebody, eventually you'll get them sometimes too. And I say that knowing that Patrick Mahomes is 3-0 against Josh Allen in the playoffs, but like it's still a small sample. I'm sure. I mean, hopefully not, but I'm sure at some point Josh might get his. Maybe again, hopefully not. But you know, it's not an accident that we had a couple years where it's like, well, we lose to the Bills in the regular season, we beat them in the playoffs. Like
Yeah,
some guys just know how to win when it's time to win, and that's not a be all end all. And those people will lose sometimes too, but over large samples, it does matter.
yeah. I take solace in a few of like Brady versus Ben. Usually Brady came out on top, but there are a few times where we won with Ben bested him, and those are the ones that I really take solace in. Like maybe he was on the same level, at least occasionally. Certainly not in terms of his overall career, uh,
And I
but
will
those are the
say,
ones that you look at. Yeah,
I will say, like I agree with you that it's mainly quarterbacks, but again, there's my bias coming in for Heinz Ward, but I I feel like if you put Heinz Ward on a team for 15 years, they're gonna win one Super Bowl. I just feel like guys that set those kinds of tones and bring that kind of culture, like there's something to it. Like you know, I really do believe that there are players in other areas of the game like I think Nick Bolton is not that flashy, but he's a winner. Like and part of it is that he knows the game. Like he is the brains of our defense. He's Steve Spagnuolo on the field, and I just don't think it's an accident that our coach does a lot of things, but we're lined up right and we come through at the right time on defense a lot of times because of Nick Bolton being, and he's never going to be a flashy stats guy or something, but those are the kinds of people I consider like a winning player. Like they do things that contribute to winning, even if they don't look great all the time doing it.
yeah. I think. I mean, like just think about. I don't know. Think about like your average work environment. Like, if you have someone that's like I don't know, really amazing at what they do, it can push you, right? It can push you to be better and go take the extra steps, right? And if it's in the NFL, you make an insane catch that you wouldn't have made, if you didn't see other people on your team also doing really insane things, right? I don't know. I feel like that can happen, and so a player like Heinz Ward, Nick Bolton, or whatever can elevate sort of everyone else on their unit. I don't know. Maybe that's. I think it's right. I don't know. Maybe it's wrong. Um,
It's funny too because I feel like as I've gotten older, I've believed more and more in this. Like, maybe it's just because we watch more sports. You see this stuff happen. Like, and I mean, at least we were at the age too where I got indoctrinated a little bit with it with Michael Jordan at the end of his career. Like, it really just felt like he was going to find a way to win the game. And I know basketball and football are different sports, but and one player exerts more influence in basketball. But I mean, I see it with Patrick Mahomes. Like, I just don't think it's an accident that he finds ways to win in the clutch. Like it's so repeatable at this point. Like, how can you, even those who are stats people, like we're getting to the law of large numbers at this point. Like, the data are showing this huge pattern. Like, what do you make of it?
yeah, yeah. You can't ignore it at this point, right? Um, Should I ask you a quick question and then maybe we'll take a break?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so this is actually a question about the Steelers for you, um, which is the latest. Well, actually, the latest news is a little bit different, but supposedly Mike Williams is visiting this week, and I wanted to know whether I should be excited about that or not. And I figured you would maybe have some more perspective on Mike Williams than I would. I will say that the latest news within the last like 2 hours is that it looks like we're making a push for Brandon Ayuk, which would be very exciting to me.
Whoa.
He tweeted at Mike Tomlin about an hour ago saying, "People are saying we look alike," uh, which they do kind of. But anyway, so putting the excitement about Brandon Ayuk aside, should I be excited by Mike Williams, or what do you think?
So I think I'm a little bit a bad person to ask about this because Mike Williams always plays really well against the Chiefs. So, like, the only reason not to be excited, in my opinion, is injury and the question about whether he's going to be the same guy because he's terrifying to play against. I feel like I'm very glad he's not on the Chargers anymore. Although he did get hurt a lot the last couple years, but a little bit in between earlier on too. But man, he was a real jump ball receiver against us, and he would make life difficult. And he was probably like one of the biggest games of his career is when they beat us in 2018 in Kansas City. Um, so yeah, I think if you got him for the right price, and especially if it was an incentive laden deal, I feel like he's very dangerous. And especially with a guy like Russell Wilson, he'll throw it up there. Like that's the kind of combination you want. And Pickens too, honestly. Like I feel like if you're thinking about Wilson, like those are the kinds of guys to throw to. So yeah, I would be excited if it's an incentive laden deal.
Yeah, I think that's what I was. I mean, it seems my impression of him is that he's kind of similar to Pickens, and that he's going to be good at those jump ball, deep ball situations. And if we are hoping, I mean, either Fields or Wilson, I think they're better at the deep passes than they are at the short stuff. At least that's my impression. And I think uh, having two receivers that are great at deep jump ball situations would be exciting with either of those quarterbacks. But okay. Should we take a break and come back in a bit?
And we're back. Um, well, did I tell you that I went back and watched like the Merv Griffin thing after you said it? Just to, I feel like he does it way better than I do though. Like it's really funny. Anyway, uh,
There's one of them where like one of the blooper reels where I think he does it after like stuffing a bunch of food and then chugging a Coke or something, and then the other people on set like George and Elaine and Jerry all crack up. Basically, it's one of those. Those
oh man,
bloopers always make me laugh more than the actual show. I think because seeing them break character. I don't know. Somehow that's more funny. But
yeah, those
anyway,
are. Although I will say that I was surprised at how much Julia Louis Dreyfus breaks character in the bloopers. I feel like she breaks character a lot.
yeah.
To the point where sometimes you wonder if like Jerry Seinfeld's getting mad at her. It's like, oh my god, you
Yeah,
do this
there
again.
are a couple bloopers where it looks like, or who plays Kramer? Michael Richards. Yeah, it looked like he's getting mad too. It's like, we gotta get this done. Come on. But it's a lot fun. A lot more fun to watch her break character than it is to watch them get mad.
Yeah, it's true. All right, well, let us go to our anecdotes. I'm gonna dip back into the CIS well. Um, I remembered this story. I don't know. I had stored it away probably because it's somewhat embarrassing for me, but here I will tell it to a place where theoretically anyone could access it. Um, so when we were in 10th grade, I talked about on a previous podcast how we had the idea of a pride, which was like our mascot was the Lions, and so they broke us up into prides, and we had our fifth period of the day after lunch. We had a study hall, and we would do the study halls in our prides, which were generally kind of like broken up by grade. So we were in 10th grade, so our pride was actually like the 10th through 12th grade because the high school was pretty small. And so one time, what we did for our like Pride lunch thing was we decided to all go to Shakespeare's Pizza, which is a well-known, very somewhat locally famous like pizza place in Columbia, Missouri. So there was one downtown, and so we all, I think we walked to Shakespeare's. It wasn't that far, and they sell pizza by the slice for lunch, and
I know where this is going. I
we
just remembered.
we were all wearing our Columbia Independent Day school shirts because we would have like a spirit day or whatever where so we had a dress code and we used to have to wear collared shirts and no jeans. They had to be like khaki material pants. But on like a spirit day, you could just wear a Columbia Independent School t-shirt. So we all would do that because we wanted to wear t-shirts. I think you could wear jeans too if you wore the t-shirt. So, well, we're all like boldly proclaiming, boldly, we're all proclaiming our allegiance to CIS with our shirts, and we're all traveling in this group. And so we go and we're getting pizza by the slice from Shakespeare's, and I get a couple slices of pepperoni, and they have those like thick pepperonis that are like filled with grease, and like it was like a little swimming pool of grease in my pepperoni. And I don't know what possessed me to do this. Probably just being 15 or 16 and stupid. But I was like, I'm going to try to pour the grease from my pepperoni onto Chris's pizza. And so you were holding your slice of pizza in your plate. I was holding mine, and I start like pouring. And then, of course, like what a person with a brain would realize is that the pizza starts falling off of the plate. And I get so surprised by that and trying to correct for it that I drop the plate onto your plate, which causes you to drop the plate, and our pizza is like all over the floor. We haven't paid for it yet. And I remember our Pride leader, like he was just like, "Oh my god!" Like like we're like I was the dumbest person ever. And afterward, he was just like. He was the one that brought attention to me. It was like we're all like wearing our CIS shirts too. It's just like advertising, like, come to this school. Like this is how dumb we are. Like, just dumping my pizza on the ground because I was trying to pour grease onto your pizza.
I remember this too. Now that yeah, I forgot this. I had forgotten this until you started telling the story, and then it came back to me. But the I think the guy that was like cutting pizza at the window and who gave us our slices, I think we like turned back to him and we're like, yeah, they're on the floor now. Can we get some others? Uh, which is funny. I think he had seen it all happen too. We did get. I think we only had to pay for the ones that we actually ate,
Yeah,
but.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a good time.
That's
I didn't see it
another
coming.
one.
You didn't see it coming. It was just like,
I don't know why. I don't even know why I thought it was a good idea. Like, but it just seemed like that would be the fun thing to do while we're in line. Like, let's see, let's pour some grease from this pepperoni.
thing is too. I probably would have been happy with the grease. Like the more grease, the better. That was my motto back then.
Yeah.
Which actually segues really nicely into my anecdote, which is also about food, also about lunch. Uh, but it was at Rockbridge after 10th grade we went to Rockbridge. And do you remember? I think yeah, I gotta ask you to check my memory on this because I don't. It seems implausible, but I think it's right that so we would sometimes go to Arby's. It was like right next door
Oh yeah.
to Rockbridge, our high school, and uh, they had a what I remember was like a $5 for $5 deal, and we we would occasionally go, and the things we would get for $5, and then proceed to eat all of them in an hour of lunch or whatever. We're like two two orders of mozzarella sticks and two orders of curly fries, and then a drink or something ridiculous,
I
like
think
the
we
least
did.
healthy you can imagine.
I think we did three of mozzarella sticks and two of curly fries.
It was maybe that's it's you're eating like probably 12 mozzarella, and they're not small mozzarella sticks, like little sizable mozzarella sticks here, and a bunch of curly fries, and you're doing this all in like an hour, and you can get this all. Is that right? Were they only $5 for this?
Oh
Man,
yeah, I mean, I remember this. I was telling someone about this not that long ago, actually. And like, remember when fast food used to have like actual deals? Like the amount of food we got for $5. Yeah, that
yeah,
we did this like several times too.
yeah, and it didn't occur to us how I don't know. I mean, I guess at that age you'll eat whatever, right? The more grease, the
Yeah.
better, I guess. But if I think about eating that now, I just like I don't know, it makes me kind of sick to my stomach. That's a lot of fried stuff, uh, and nothing else really. Just
Yeah, we
just curly fries and mozzarella sticks.
yeah nary healthy food in there. We had
Yeah,
potatoes, breading, and cheese, all fried, and that's it.
some marinara sauce maybe.
So, oh, that's true. We got some tomato. We got some fruit.
Yeah. Yeah, those. We also went to Subway occasionally, which I think was probably ostensibly healthier, at least less fried.
We
But
would
yeah,
go
that
to
was.
Panera too. I remember.
Oh, I
And
forgot about that. Yeah.
do you remember? I remember sometimes we would go to Q's, the Chinese restaurant, and I remember every time you would get like rice with soy sauce. Like the
Is that what
little,
I ordered? That was
yeah,
something on
you
my. That
just
was.
order like a big of rice and just put soy sauce on
Oh, I was so strange. uh, well, yeah. Wow, that's a have that just drawing the contrast. Like we just went on. So this trip we took in Texas, we like basically researched. We went to a bunch of cities in Texas last week, and we went and we researched like the best food in each city basically, and tried to eat our way through Texas, and it did not disappoint. But I can't imagine like contrasting what we ate this past week with a bowl of rice and soy sauce. It's just like oh, it's not the same person. I don't know. That's strange.
What did you think of? I hear all the time about how the food in Austin is amazing. Was
Yeah, yeah. Austin was awesome. We ate Terry Black's barbecue there. So normally I'm pescatarian, but when in Rome, um, and that was some of the best barbecue. Probably the best barbecue I've ever had. I mean, we got like a beef rib that was. Whew, I'm still thinking about it. And the brisket was, it was pretty awesome. I remember what we did. Oh, for dinner, we didn't do anything remarkable for dinner. That was lunch, but we did go to a rodeo. We went to our first rodeo in Austin,
oh,
which was, I gotta say, the atmosphere is not that different from a football game. It's
oh.
some similar elements there. Um, Maybe arguably some toxic masculinity and whatnot in the same, exactly the same capacities. But anyway, yeah.
I went to a rodeo as a child in rural Missouri, and it did not have the same atmosphere. But that's probably because it was in rural Missouri. There's just not a lot of people there. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, don't. I'm hoping maybe like our Kansas City people won't get this far into the podcast and hear that you said a place in Texas had the best barbecue you've ever had.
That's true. I don't. To be fair, when I used to eat Kansas City barbecue, I don't know if again, I was eating bowls of white rice and soy sauce at the time. That was my taste at the time. So, uh, probably Kansas City barbecue is better than I remember.
Yeah, I have heard though. So everyone says that the big triumvirate is Texas, Memphis, and Kansas City. Um, and people do say that the beef ribs are the thing in Texas. Apparently, Kansas City's the burnt ends. I don't know what
Oh,
Memphis is. Ribs? I don't know. I'm not sure.
yeah. Um, I'm glad that North Carolina does not show up in that triumvirate because I have had North Carolina barbecue, and the first time I had it, I was thinking like, is there something wrong with the sauce? like I thought that I had gotten the wrong sauce or something. It's just like a sort of vinegar sauce, and I don't know, apparently that's how they like to do it there. But I tried it a couple times, and each time I thought something had gone wrong with the order. So I don't know, didn't do it for me.
Well, that's never great. Oh, all right. Well, I guess that is it for episode 7.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a hefty one.
yeah, we we are making y'all listen for a long time now.
But thank you for listening. I mean,
Yeah.
this is exciting that it's still going here, and it looks like we're getting a lot of engagement. So I'm really thankful for all the engagement and all the views and listens that we're getting.
Yeah, please follow along wherever. Please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have any questions or anything you want us to talk about on the shows, we'd be happy to. Otherwise, until next time.
See ya.